The colony's sky burned with alien fire. Great silver warships hovered above, their hulls glinting cold against the blue, raining down streaks of plasma that reduced defensive towers to molten slag. On the surface, humans scrambled, some firing rifles at shadows they could not hope to hit, others clutching children as if arms could shield them from orbital bombardment. Above it all, Admiral Vorith leaned on the railing of his command deck, expression caught between boredom and faint amusement. "These humans," he muttered, voice low, "always running, always pleading. Do they not grow tired of the same performance?" His bridge crew chuckled in unison, eager to mirror their commander's disdain. Screens flickered with images of human civilians begging for mercy. A governor in a soot-stained uniform appeared on one channel, raising trembling hands. His words were desperate, promises of surrender, a willingness to hand over resources, anything to save lives. Vorith tilted his head, considering. His eyes, reptilian and narrow, glowed faintly in the dim light. Then he said, "Mercy is waste. We conquer, not coddle." With a single gesture, the transmission cut off, replaced by the sight of plasma strikes leveling the city square where the governor had stood. The bridge erupted in cruel laughter, the crew intoxicated by the certainty of their superiority. On the ground, Lieutenant Sarah Keene, leading what remained of the colony's defense, heard the distant thunder and knew the governor was gone. Her people's calls crackled through damaged comms, panic, disbelief, sobbing children. She pressed her hand to her earpiece, voice steady though her throat was dry. "Keep moving. Get to the tunnels. Don't look back." Her calmness was not courage, it was duty, hammered into her by years of training. But inside, rage smoldered. She had seen war before, but never cruelty as casual as this. The aliens were not interested in conquest alone, they reveled in humiliation. Her thoughts hardened. This was no war of survival, it was a performance. And performances could be interrupted. High above, Vorith turned from the slaughter. His mind was already elsewhere. The colonies were hardly sport anymore, fragile settlements spread too thin, too reliant on Earth, too naive to resist. He strode to the tactical map, claws clicking against metal as he gestured at the great blue sphere pulsing in the center. Earth. The jewel the humans clung to as a symbol. "Cut off the head, the body collapses," he said. "Strike Earth. Their colonies will fold within days." His second-in-command hesitated. "Admiral, Earth is larger, more fortified than these fringes." Vorith's lip curled in disdain. "Fortified." He tapped the map with a talon. "Primitive cannons and a handful of orbital stations. They hide behind symbols, not strength. Once we burn their home, they will crawl at our feet." On Earth itself, news traveled quickly. Broadcasts carried fragmented images of falling colonies, cities in flames, skies torn apart, alien fleets unchallenged. People whispered of collapse, of history repeating itself, humanity fragmented, outmatched, broken before it could unite. In the underground chambers of Geneva, the United Nations Council gathered. Their voices were hushed, faces grim. General Marcus Hale stood apart, his scarred hands gripping the table. He had commanded during the first contact skirmishes decades ago, when humanity's reach was smaller and its arrogance greater. He had warned of this day, of enemies who would not bargain or compromise. "They won't stop," he said quietly, cutting through the murmurs. "We've given them every chance, every plea, every negotiation. They don't see our kindness as strength, they see it as weakness. And weakness invites slaughter." The councilwoman beside him, voice trembling but resolute, asked, "And if they come for Earth?" He looked at her, his gaze as steady as stone. "Then Earth will answer." The chamber fell into silence, heavy and cold. In orbit above the colony, Vorith ordered his ships into formation. "Transmit this victory," he said. "Let every human world see their fate. Let them watch as Earth itself is next." His tone carried no doubt, only the certainty of a predator that had never known fear. But even predators could overreach. Back in the Geneva chamber, a message was composed. It carried no flourish, no bravado, only words carved in iron. A simple warning, broadcast on every frequency the aliens used. This is your last chance. Leave Earth untouched. Stop your advance. Enough. When the transmission reached Vorith's fleet, his bridge crew burst into laughter. One officer mimicked the flat human tone, drawing more derision. They think they can threaten us, someone sneered. Voritha's eyes glittered with amusement as he leaned back into his chair. Enough, they say? I will show them what enough looks like. Set course for Earth. The laughter on the bridge carried on, cruel and careless, echoing across the cold stars. Far below, in the tunnels of the burning colony, Sarah Keene guided the last group of civilians into safety. Dust fell from the ceiling as the bombardment raged above. A child clutched her arm, eyes wide with terror. She knelt, meeting the child's gaze, and forced her lips into the smallest of smiles. It's going to be all right, she said softly, though the words felt like ash. But somewhere deep inside, something shifted. She remembered the governor's futile pleas, the arrogance in the alien commander's face, the laughter that echoed even as people died. Her chest tightened, not with despair, but with a new certainty. The humans had bent, pleaded, endured. But the moment was coming when endurance would end. High in orbit, Vorith watched the human message repeat one last time across the screens. Enough. He chuckled, dismissive. The cattle believe they can threaten wolves. He did not know, could not know, that this was no idle warning. The word was a promise, a turning point, and with that word, humanity stopped pretending to be kind. The alien fleet emerged from hyperspace above Earth, engines flaring like cruel stars. Admiral Vorith expected chaos, expected to hear the panic chatter of defenders scrambling, the shrill cries of governments begging for mercy. Yet the calms were silent. Earth hung below, darkened, its glittering nightscape dimmed as if the planet itself had drawn a curtain across its face. Vorith frowned, leaning forward in his command chair. Why are the lights gone? He demanded. His crew exchanged uneasy glances. A junior officer checked readings. Global power signatures are minimal, Admiral. Civilian grids offline. It is as though they've shut the planet down. Voritha's lip curled. They are cowards, hiding in the dark. His words were confident, but something in his chest stirred with unease. On Earth's surface, General Marcus Hale stood in the operations hub buried beneath Cheyenne Mountain. Around him, officers monitored glowing tactical displays, each heartbeat ticking toward inevitability. His voice was steady as he gave the order. Hold fire until they commit. Make them believe we are frozen. His hand hovered above the console, yet his eyes remained fixed on the massive projection of the alien fleet, dark triangles blotting out stars. Beside him, Sarah Keene stood rigid in a fresh uniform, brought back from the colonies as both survivor and witness. The memories of burned-out cities clung to her like smoke. She studied the screens, jaw clenched, but beneath her anger there was focus. She understood the stakes. This was not defense, but a trap. Vorith, still watching Earth's unlit surface, turned to his weapons officer. Deploy the bombardment drones. Let us end this symbol before their people realize what is happening. The drones launched, descending like a storm of iron hail. Then, all at once, the trap closed. From Earth's shadow, vast shapes ignited. Orbital platforms disguised as debris, railguns powered by reserves hidden deep underground. Kinetic rounds screamed upward, tearing through drones before they breached atmosphere. Mines that had floated unseen in high orbit lit space with sudden brilliance, shredding alien escorts. The first of Voritha's destroyers buckled, its hull collapsing in silence. Admiral, his communications officer shouted. Multiple weapons platforms, firing solutions precise, coordinated. This was planned. Voritha's throat tightened. Impossible. They couldn't have. The words died as another warship vanished in a white bloom. On Earth, General Hale did not flinch. His orders flowed like stone. Calm, deliberate, final. Phase 2. Target their flagships. Cut out their eyes. Sarah watched railgun fire streak upward, every shot deliberate. There was no panic, no waste, only precision. She felt a strange chill run through her. This was not defense alone. This was retribution. Across alien monitors, humanity's message returned, broadcast on every channel, translated into the invader's language. A woman's voice, flat and cold, carried through every vessel. You believed we were divided. You believed wrong. We gave you every chance to stop. Now this ends. On Vorith's bridge, silence reigned. For the first time, no one laughed. Officers' hands trembled at their consoles, and the Admiral himself felt the weight of the words.
Calm.
Absolute. Not a threat, but a verdict. The alien fleet tried to regroup. Commands rattled through channels, but wormhole gates suddenly opened across the system. Human ships emerged, not clumsy frigates, but sleek, heavily armed cruisers built in secret. They struck with surgical precision, vanishing as quickly as they appeared. Vorith realized with horror that humanity had not been scrambling for survival these past decades. They had been preparing, watching, learning. He gripped the railing, claws digging into steel. His mind raced back over centuries of conquest. No prey had ever deceived them so completely. No prey had ever let themselves bleed, sacrificing colonies, feigning weakness, only to reveal strength at the moment of greatest arrogance. In the war council chambers of his empire, doubt began to spread. Reports filtered back. Dozens of ships lost within minutes, orbital mines detonating in perfect sequence, wormhole strikes disabling command vessels. Some leaders scoffed, insisting this was only a temporary resistance. Others trembled. Vorith knew better. He had seen enough in mere hours to understand the truth. Humanity had not only studied war, they had lived it, generation after generation. Their history was fire and attrition, trench mud and cities reduced to ash, entire nations rebuilt from rubble. And now they had turned that inheritance into strategy. On Earth, Sarah felt her heartbeat slow as alien ships fled in disarray. She whispered to herself, barely audible, "We are not prey. We never were." General Hale glanced at her, then back at the screen. "They underestimated us," he said, though there was no triumph in his tone. "That mistake will cost them their empire." His words were not boastful. They were grim, heavy with inevitability. Vorith stared at the burning wreckage of his fleet. Fear, an emotion he had not known since his youth, crept into his bones. He remembered the human message, repeated again on every channel. Enough. It echoed in his mind, not as arrogance, but as truth. He thought of their wars, the way they had consumed themselves countless times, yet always returned stronger. He realized then that the laughter of his bridge crew had been nothing more than the noise of the ignorant, blind to the predator that had waited in silence. Another ship vanished in flames. Panic rippled through his officers. For the first time, Vorith did not silence them. He had no words. The humans had been kind. Too kind. But kindness had run its course. Now he looked into the abyss of what they truly were, and the abyss stared back. The section ends with the alien fleet breaking, retreating in confusion while Earth remains standing, unbroken. Humanity, no longer pleading, had revealed the truth, that the war had only just begun, and mercy had been left behind. The War Council chamber on Caraxes Prime shook with anger, voices colliding in a storm of denial and fear. Generals pounded fists against stone tables, politicians hissed accusations, and words like fluke, accident, and statistical anomaly flew like daggers. At the center of the chaos, Admiral Vorith stood silent, his eyes fixed on the holomap that showed the charred remnants of his fleet drifting above Earth. He had expected scorn for his failure, perhaps demotion or disgrace. What he had not expected was the Council's blindness. One senator sneered, "You lost ships because you underestimated them. Replace the fleet, and this nuisance disappears." Vorith's throat tightened, but he forced his voice into control. This was no nuisance. This was no accident. The humans laid a trap, so precise that entire fleets collapsed within minutes. They sacrificed their colonies to lure us. That is not weakness, that is calculation. Laughter rippled through the chamber. Another senator leaned forward, lips curled. Calculation? They are primitives who stumble through technology stolen from others. You embarrass yourself. Vorith's claws scraped the table, but he held back the growl rising in his chest. He remembered the human broadcast, steady, merciless, devoid of fear. He remembered their orbital guns firing with clinical precision. And he remembered the word that had cut through him more sharply than any weapon. Enough. Back on Earth, General Marcus Hale studied the map of shifting front lines with eyes like stone. Reports came in from colonies retaken, alien garrisons routed, with shocking efficiency. He knew victory was only the beginning. Wars were not won by battles. They were won by endurance, by grinding down the enemy until nothing remained. Sarah Keene stood at his side, newly assigned to his command staff. She still carried the ghosts of her lost colony in her gaze, but she moved with renewed purpose. Every intercepted transmission, every strike order, she processed with a quiet fury. Hale watched her carefully, understanding that vengeance had tempered her resolve into something sharper, but also something fragile. Too much rage could blind a soldier, too little, and she would never stand against the storm that was coming. They will not stop, Hale said to her one night, voice low as he reviewed intercepted alien council debates. Arrogance is a chain heavier than fear. They'll keep throwing fleets at us until they break. Sarah asked, and when they break? Hale didn't answer immediately. His eyes lingered on a hollow image of Earth, defenses burning brightly against the void. Finally, he said, then the galaxy learns who we are. On Caraxes Prime, Vorith tried again to pierce the Council's arrogance. He played footage of Earth's defenses, railguns tearing through cruisers, wormhole strikes dismantling fleets. He showed archives of humanity's history that his intelligence officers had gathered, world wars, civil wars, endless conflicts where humans slaughtered one another with relentless ingenuity. Do you not see? Vorith's voice cracked with urgency. They have waged war upon themselves for millennia. Every generation trained in blood, every nation forged in conflict. They did not evolve despite war, they evolved because of it. And now that violence is united, aimed outward. But the chamber erupted again. Some leaders sneered at the ancient footage, dismissing it as irrelevant. Others whispered uneasily, but fear alone was not enough to shake centuries of supremacy. Finally, the High Speaker rose, silencing the noise with a gesture. Her voice was cold and absolute. You will return to the field, Admiral. You will restore our honor. The humans cannot fight an empire. Crush them, or be crushed yourself. Vorith bowed stiffly, but inside his chest, dread hollowed him out. The Council's arrogance had become his burden. They would not prepare. They would not retreat. And so he realized the task of understanding humanity fell to him alone. In the weeks that followed, the galaxy trembled. Human fleets struck without warning, opening wormholes above alien strongholds and vanishing before reinforcements could arrive. Garrisons reported entire battalions erased in silence. Alien commanders spoke of ships that fought without crews, machines that learned in battle. Panic spread faster than orders could contain it. Vorith studied every engagement, forcing himself to understand. Each loss was not random, not luck, it was pattern. Humans fought like predators who had stalked their prey for generations. They didn't waste resources. They didn't seek glory. They simply dismantled, piece by piece, until only silence remained. One night, alone in his quarters, Vorith replayed footage of Earth's wars again. Soldiers huddled in trenches under endless shelling, cities rebuilt after nuclear fire, insurgents fighting with nothing but determination and crude weapons. He leaned forward, scales tight across his jaw. They are not like us, he whispered. They do not fear destruction, because destruction is their history. They do not fear loss, because loss is their teacher. For the first time in his long career, he envied an enemy. Humanity's brutality was not a weakness, but a kind of immortality. Back on Earth, Sarah stood at the edge of a war table, watching as new orders spread across the fleet. Her voice, when she spoke, was steady.
We've always fought ourselves.
Maybe this is the first time we're fighting for something larger. Hale nodded, but his eyes were distant. And maybe the first time the galaxy will learn that humans don't stop when they've been wronged. They stop when there's nothing left to fight. In that moment, Sarah understood what Hale carried, the burden of knowing that victory would not bring peace, but transformation. Once awakened, humanity could not return to the softness it had once clung to. Voritha's fleet massed again at the edges of human space. He obeyed his orders, though every instinct screamed otherwise. He had seen the truth, but his empire was deaf. His officers whispered doubts, their confidence shaken, but still they followed him. On his final night before battle, Vorith stood alone in the observation deck, staring into the void. For the first time he felt small, not because of humanity's weapons, but because of their resolve. He whispered to himself the word that had haunted him since Earth's broadcast. Enough. The word no longer sounded like arrogance. It sounded like prophecy. The stage was set, fleets gathered on both sides, and the greatest battle of the age loomed just beyond the horizon. The council still believed in their supremacy. Hale prepared his people for total war. Sarah steadied herself on the knife edge between vengeance and duty, and Vorith carried the weight of knowing his empire's pride had already sown its downfall. The galaxy held its breath. The fleets met in silence, two storms converging across the black canvas of space. On one side stretched the disciplined wall of humanity's ships, sleek silhouettes drifting like blades unsheathed. On the other, the vast armada of the Empire, bristling with cannons, banners of dominance pulsing across their comms. The clash was inevitable, but in the seconds before it began, the void seemed to hold its breath. General Marcus Hale stood on the command deck of the UNS Resolute, his posture iron straight. He had fought wars against his own kind, but this was different. His people were united, their survival tied together by necessity and fury. His eyes swept over his officers, calm in the way only someone who had accepted both victory and death could be. "Hold the line," he said softly. "When they break, we end this." Sarah Keene stood a few steps behind him, strapped into her station. The ghosts of her lost colony moved with her, whispering at the edges of her mind, but their voices no longer weighed her down. She had become something sharper. Vengeance had matured into purpose. As she keyed in targeting sequences, she whispered under her breath, "This is for all of them." Across the gulf of space, Admiral Vorith paced his bridge. The Empire's banners flickered proudly, but his crew's eyes betrayed them. He had told the Council this war would devour them. Now, with humanity waiting like a wolf in the dark, he felt the truth clawing at his insides. He raised his voice, hard enough to smother his own dread. "Advance. Show them we are not prey." The first salvo lit the stars. Alien cruisers unleashed a torrent of plasma, washing the void with rivers of fire. But the humans did not scatter. Shields shimmered, railguns answered with precise fury, and autonomous drones streaked forward, weaving through enemy fire as if guided by instinct. Explosions rippled across the alien front line, shockwaves echoing through the void. Sarah's console pulsed with each confirmed strike. She called out vectors, her voice steady even as the Resolute shook from near misses. "Left flank folding. They're hesitating." Hale didn't look away from the tactical map. "Exploit it. Push the wedge." And so the humans pressed forward, quiet and relentless. There were no battle cries, no desperate charges. Their strategy was clinical: wormhole breaches opening behind enemy carriers, drones severing supply lines, precision strikes gutting command ships. It was not war as the aliens knew it, it was dismantling. On Vortha's bridge, chaos reigned. His officers shouted, demanding orders, but the patterns made no sense. Ships vanished into wormholes only to reappear flanking his lines. Communications collapsed under cyber assaults. Every countermeasure they deployed was anticipated, dismantled before it took hold. He watched as entire wings disappeared in silence. He thought of the human history he had studied, wars that spanned continents, battles fought in mud and snow, armies that refused to die even when the world burned around them. He had thought them brutal then. Now, watching their fleets move with ghost-like precision, he realized brutality was mercy compared to what stood before him. Sarah caught Hale's eye as the alien center buckled. Her face was pale, but her gaze was alight with grim determination. "They're breaking." Hale nodded, his jaw tight. "No pursuit.
Pin them.
Cut off their escape. This ends here." The order spread, and the human fleets closed in with terrifying calm. Alien cruisers tried to retreat, only to be trapped by wormhole ambushes. Flagships erupted in blossoms of fire, their deaths silent against the stars. The Empire's great war machine, once a tidal wave that had swept over half the galaxy, was being reduced to fragments by a species it had dismissed as weak. Vorath clutched the railing, the weight of inevitability pressing into his bones. He knew then that the Council had doomed them, blinded by pride. He whispered to himself, though no one could hear, "They gave us a warning." And we laughed. On the Resolute, Hale watched the tactical map glow with spreading green as human forces tightened the net. He could have smiled, but his face remained carved from stone. "Open a channel," he ordered. Across every surviving alien vessel, humanity's voice returned. Calm, steady, undeniable. "You are beaten. We do not seek conquest. We do not seek revenge. We seek an end. Surrender now, and live under peace. Resist, and you will not live at all." Silence followed, stretching like a noose. Then, one by one, alien ships powered down their weapons. Banners of surrender flickered across comms. The great fleet of the Empire, once the terror of countless systems, collapsed into submission in the span of minutes. Vorath closed his eyes. Shame twisted in his chest, but alongside it came relief. He turned to his officers, voice hoarse. "Transmit surrender. Enough blood has been spilled." When the signal reached the Resolute, Sarah let out a breath she had been holding so tightly her ribs ached. She slumped back, trembling hands gripping her console. Hale simply gave a curt nod, as though he had expected nothing else. The battle was over, but its shadow lingered. Humanity had revealed itself, not as fragile prey, not as divided squabblers, but as something far older and far more dangerous. United, patient, and merciless when pushed too far. Later, as the ceasefire rippled across the galaxy, Vorath found himself summoned before human envoys. He expected execution, humiliation, some theatrical display of triumph. Instead, General Hale offered him a choice. "You know your people. You know what is broken in them. We will not slaughter you, Admiral, but you will serve in the rebuilding. You will help guide what comes next. That is the only mercy we will offer." Vorath bowed his head, bitterness warring with gratitude. Mercy, he realized, was not weakness in human hands. Mercy was control. On Earth, Sarah stood with Hale in the quiet aftermath, watching as fleets returned from war. She whispered, "We've won, but it doesn't feel like victory." Hale's gaze lingered on the stars, hard and unyielding. "Because it isn't. This was never about victory. It was about survival. And now, the galaxy knows what we are capable of when survival is threatened." He turned away, leaving Sarah with the weight of his words. She looked out into the dark, where new horizons waited, and for the first time, she understood the true cost of what had been unleashed. The humans had been kind once. They had pleaded, endured, offered peace even to those who spat on it. But that age had ended. Now, united by war, they had shown the galaxy what humanity truly was. And the galaxy would never forget the day humans said enough.